Is it the whiplash you receive from the classic Matterhorn, or is it the futuristic Space Mountain that makes us love Disneyland? If 55,000 buttons are sewn onto characters' costumes each year, then how many frozen lemonades do you think are sold? I'm going to be speaking to you about the history of Disneyland, the creation, the construction, and its opening day. Almost everyone has been to a Disney park, seen a Disney movie, heard a Disney song, or read a Disney book. Since 1955, Disneyland has had millions of visitors. I'm going to share with you some of the fun facts that keep the park's millions of visitors rolling in each year. Most parents have considered visiting Disneyland as a vacation spot for their family because they themselves visited as children. I'm going to be sharing with you how Walt Disney made this family experience possible. Today I will touch on Walt Disney and his creative plans, the many hours put into building this park, and what it took for the park to be. So many people visit Disneyland, but so little people know about the man who created it. Here's some information on Walt and his ideas to create what we now call Disneyland. Walter Elias Disney was born in 1901. Entrepreneur, animator, producer, and screenwriter were just many of his contributions to the entertainment industry. With his brother, he co-founded Disney Production, one of the most commonly known motion picture production companies around. Today it is known as the Walt Disney Company. According to DesignDisney.com, updated in 2014, the idea of what Disneyland was originally called the Riverside Drive Theme Park Project. Walt wanted a park where families could come and see the popular cartoon Mickey Mouse. A small group of Disney studio employees, planners, and engineers would spend 5 years developing Disneyland. This is the original draw of what the park would look like. Visual of the park being built, or what the original park would look like. Now you can't see it. With some brief knowledge of how the concept of the park came to be, you can only imagine what it actually took for Disneyland to be constructed, and what it took for Walt's dream to become a reality. After the initial idea was conceived, the first step to building the extravagant park was to find somewhere to put it. Disney acquired 160 acres of land, and soon the construction began. Walt Disney checked on the progress of the park weekly. In the book, The Hidden Magic of Walt Disney World, page 47, it is said that he even had a small apartment built above the fire station in Main Street, where he often stayed to reassure his employees he was working as hard as they were. As months passed, jungles were built, towns created, and the famous castle constructed. Recognize this? This is the Princess Castle being built. This is my visual of the castle being built. All the work of who we now call the Imagineers pays off when the park opens exactly 365 days later. The grand opening of Disneyland is heavily anticipated. After 365 rigorous days and $17 million spent, Disneyland opens on July 17, 1955. Disneyland featured 5 theme lands and 20 attractions. Not all went smooth for the opening day. When 2,800 guests arrived, trees were still being planted, paint was still too wet to touch, and women's heels sank into the freshly poured cement. Many drinking fountains were dry due to the plumber strike, and shortly after the gates were opened, food and refreshments had run dry. Here's guests standing in line to enter the park in the 100-degree Southern California heat. Disneyland opened on one of the hottest days of the year. Thankfully, day 2 went far better. Measures were immediately taken to resolve the problems that opening day held. According to Disneyland.com, 19 million people visit the park each year. Even with all the hiccups, the opening was grand. In this speech, I have covered Walt Disney's history on how the creation of Disneyland has come about, and what it actually took to make his dream a reality. The grand success the park has become. I hope that this has given you all some information and how Disneyland came to be and what it is today. And if you get a chance to visit, you will remember all the hard work it took to make your visit to the happiest place on earth magical.